Okay, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kyra Mann, CEO of Mito Action, and we are thrilled to be here today with you for our monthly Mito Expert Series call. Today's topic is on advocacy, and we're thrilled to partner with the Everylife Foundation for today's presentation. As we're now using Zoom meeting for the presentations so that you can log in and follow along live with the presenter slides, or if you prefer, you can still just call in via the telephone and follow along on your own. Today's presentation will be recorded and available on the Mito Action website over the course of the next couple of days. As we go through today's presentation, if you have questions, please feel free to submit them using the chat feature. You can access the chat at the bottom of your screen through the menus bar. If you're calling in via phone, you can email your questions to info@mitoaction.org, and we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. We're excited to have with us today Shannon vonFelden. Shannon is the Director of Rare Disease Legislative Advocates, a program of the Everylife Foundation for Rare Diseases. She works with rare disease advocates across the country to engage at the local, state, and federal levels. She began her career on Capitol Hill as a legislative assistant for Congressman Shelley Berkeley, working on healthcare and veteran affairs issues. Shannon has worked with national nonprofit organizations to further their policy and advocacy goals, including Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation and National Osteoporosis Foundation. She received her Master's of Public Policy from the American University. Please join me in welcoming Shannon.
Great, thank you so much, Kyra. We'll go ahead and get started. Kyra asked me to present to you all today on the power of patient advocacy, something that we at the Everylife Foundation are very passionate about. So I'm thrilled to get to share more about what advocacy means and how you all can play a bigger part in it, and perhaps even in the Rare Disease Legislative Advocates Program. So we'll get started. This is like our favorite photo to show. This is actually from our Rare Disease Week in 2019, where we had over 800 people attend events that week here in Washington, D.C. And we just love to see this group grow and grow each year. Kyra, I think, covered this slide pretty well. So thank you so much. Here's the agenda of what I have planned to discuss today with you all. I'd like to share a little bit about the Everylife Foundation and Rare Disease Legislative Advocates. We'll get into the power of patient advocacy, where to start in it all, and ways to get more involved. So a little bit about the Everylife Foundation for Rare Diseases. Our organization is 10 years old now, and we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to advancing the development of treatments and diagnostic opportunities for rare disease patients through public policy. So we are a purely public policy organization. We are based here in Washington, D.C., and our goal is to advance the development of treatments and really to end the diagnostic odyssey that so many rare disease patients suffer through for years. And you can see through this wonderful timeline how we started and where we are today. So Rare Disease Legislative Advocates is a program of the Everylife Foundation, and our main goal is to educate patient advocates about legislation and policy and how that impacts their ability to access treatments and provide them the resources that they need. And so we do this through a number of activities, the largest of which is to build awareness on Capitol Hill and ensure that Congress hears directly from the patients and the caregivers. Our goal through many of our programs is to connect every member of Congress with a rare disease advocate so that when legislation is on the floor that they're considering, they realize that it has a real impact on real people and that they can connect it to a person that they've actually met that has a disease whose life could be saved by the policies that they're choosing to support or oppose. So taking an active role in this political process is so important to impact the science of rare diseases, the development process through the FDA and that pipeline. And then at the end of that pipeline of the FDA approval process, the advocacy does not end, and it only begins to ensure that there is actually access to those treatments. So through this long journey, you have the power to affect change and to have an active role in that political process by voting, volunteering on campaigns, attending town hall events, meeting with your member of Congress, and building those relationships. Influencing legislation and policy can take many roles: building the coalitions, activating your own personal contacts, your family members, your friends, and supporting other organizations and people with their policy goals. But in the end, it's just so important to make sure that no one else is speaking for you. Patients really are the best advocates. So finding a place where you feel comfortable to channel your advocacy energy, and then just making sure your voice is heard. One of the really interesting examples of patient advocacy is in the late 80s when AIDS activists stormed the FDA. And because of these activists and there are pictures of them laying outside the gates of the FDA was really forced to rethink how their approval process was affecting patients, and was forced to create the accelerated approval path, which cut down the times and the costs of HIV drugs in 1992. And one of the effects of this was that 25 new drugs were approved over a 15-year period, which doesn't sound like a lot, maybe to some, but that was the biggest surge in innovation ever before. So it really highlights that educated and activated patients are far greater at making change than paid lobbyists, which is something we strongly believe in here at the Everylife Foundation. So your advocacy matters, and one thing I just cannot stress enough is that your legislators actually want to hear from you. You are their constituent, and they're there to represent you, whether at the state capitol or here in our nation's capital. They are representing you, and for the most part, they want to do right by their constituents. In addition, you are the expert, so no one can share your experience that you have with your disease or as a caregiver better than you can. And so it's so important to ensure that they are hearing the stories directly from the experts, which are the patients themselves. This is actually a survey that was done in 2015 related to how influential certain advocacy contacts were. It was a survey of congressional staffers, and it shows that in-person meetings with their constituents was rated as having the highest influence on impacting decisions by the office. So it goes to show that the relationships really do matter. And while we take a lot of different forms of advocacy, making those phone calls, writing the letters and the emails, which are also very important for moving the ball forward, those in-person meetings are the most influential to getting your point and message across. So this is the roadmap that many folks are probably already familiar with, how a bill becomes a law. I know that you all are very interested in state legislation and state level advocacy. So I think it's important to point out that most state governments typically follow the same structure as the federal government, having 2 different houses, and follow the same process for passing a law. And so what I like to just highlight by showing this chart is that there are so many steps along the way from when a bill is introduced to when a bill becomes law for advocacy. Each step in this process is really a step where an action by advocates can be taken to ensure that your policy goals are being pushed further towards the end goal. So getting your members to co-sponsor the bill, getting hearings on the bill, getting a markup, and then getting it to the floor for a vote. There are lots of different steps to activate your advocacy. So where to start? Creating a plan is always a great place to start. Checking to see what your resources are for people funding your contacts, gathering information, garnering community support, identifying who your allies are, who your opposition is going to be, who the targets and key influencers are, and building your coalition. With strategy, determining what your goal is and how you are going to achieve it with a policy, and then finally tactics, what actions will you make to reach your policy goal. So many of you might be wondering what you are actually doing as an advocate. We like to talk a lot about educating. You're also providing guidance, you're persuading with your personal stories. And then the most extreme would be pressure, and that's for instance, when people are protesting like the AIDS activists did in the late 80s. So this is the menu kind of to choose from in and how you choose to advocate. So who you want to engage. On the state level, you really would need to reach out to the governor. Governors are given such extraordinary power. They're actually given a lot more executive power than a president is given. So a governor's support can really be critical to moving any state or legislative efforts. And you want to understand your state legislature. All state legislatures actually work pretty differently for when they are in session. Some states are only in session once every 2 years. How many working days they are actually in the state capitol to pass bills, what the veto powers of your governor are, and familiarize yourself with that process so you know when your legislators are actually working and can work to move the legislation on your behalf. And then, of course, when engaging your hometown legislators, whether that's your state or federal legislators, who your representatives are, and then you might want to branch out from just who your representatives are to reaching out to members of the Committee of Jurisdiction, the leadership members of the majority and minority parties, and then also the government agencies and other state and local representatives. And I can never say enough how important staff members are to our state and federal legislators. They're an amazing resource, and really they have the ears of the members. They are really helping to form positions and platforms for the legislators. And so they really are an important part of the process and shouldn't be discounted, to meeting with them and educating the staff people in addition to the members themselves. When to engage your members and legislators, really anytime and all the time. You don't want to miss that opportunity for your decision makers to hear directly from you. And again, in the state legislatures, the calendars are a little bit tricky depending on the state. So you definitely don't want to miss your window for when your legislature in your state is actually in session during the year. But you can schedule in-district meetings during district work periods, pay attention to the bill's progress along the chart of how a bill becomes a law, and schedule meetings or phone calls and emails around those key events. And then just don't wait until it's too late. As a former staff member of a congresswoman, I can remember many constituents who would call me after she had already voted on a bill, and it was already too late to have done anything. So really, you want to make sure to make those phone calls and meetings beforehand, so that you can actually have a real impact on their positions. And then there are so many different ways to engage. The tactics being in-person meetings, holding briefings, perhaps as an organization in a state, you might want to hold a briefing for your state legislators to learn more about a certain issue or policy change that you're interested in, writing the letters and emails, using the media, calling up your local newspaper or television station and just pitching them the idea that you are affected by a certain rare disease and how a piece of legislation or policy change could really help improve your quality of life, for instance. Attending town hall meetings, calling, and then of course social media. Everyone has a Facebook or Twitter account these days, and members love to get thank yous for their votes on social media, and to connect with their constituents that way. And of course, we always want to make it personal, to share that story of why this is so important to you. So when you do meet with your decision makers, we want to find a way to connect. So research your decision makers ahead of time. What issues are they really interested in? What legislation have they supported? And what do you personally have in common with them? This is all information that you can usually find on their official website, perhaps Googling them, but finding ways to personally connect with them. I know when I meet with a member who represents myself, I like to tell them where I live, right? I live on 10th Street, right next to Smith Elementary School, where my kids go. And then the legislator can see you in the community and can picture you in their district. And then of course, remember, rare disease issues are bipartisan. Politics should not have to come into it. We are the Rare Party, and we are supporting all people with rare diseases. So when you meet with your legislator, there are 3 parts. You want to introduce yourself, like I just did, share your story, and then you want to make the ask, what you want the legislator to do on your behalf. Telling your story, it can take some practice, but practice makes perfect. Here's a little meme from The Princess Bride, where Inigo is very clear about his introduction. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. About his story, You Killed My Father, and then his expectations and his ask, Prepare to Die. So keeping it short and sweet, and ensuring that you get your point across the best you can. So making the ask can be a little bit tricky. What exactly is the ask? So you want to describe what the problem is, what the solution is, and then the call to action, what they can do to help you. So how they can help you, you want to be as clear and specific as possible. This can often be the hardest part. I, as a staff person, was in many meetings with advocates who would tell me, you know, a story about what problems and difficulties they were facing. And of course, we wanted to help in any way we could, but then we were left to figure it out on our own. And so in many cases, that means that unfortunately we weren't able to help that constituent who'd come into our office. So being very clear and specific about what it is that you are seeking will ensure that your expectations are met. So the goal is to get your member to take action on your priority, whatever that may be. Make sure your request is clear and articulated and is an action that they can take. So it can be as specific as please co-sponsor Senate Bill 2158. And then that makes it so much easier for your follow-up too, because you know exactly what it is you're looking for. We kind of talked a little bit about social media already, but using it for your advocacy, really anyone can do it straight from their phone, but you can use it to make your legislators aware of the problems you face, thank them for taking actions, even if it's not even your specific priority, but if it does benefit you or your community, reach out and thank them. And then the next time you ask them to do something, they will have a good memories of your appreciation for their past work on your behalf. And then thank them for meetings with you when you do meet with them. Take pictures with the legislators and post them on social media, tagging the members and thanking them and reiterating what your ask is. So thank you so much for the meeting. I really hope that you're able to support HR 25, for instance. And then continuing to grow those relationships, just continuing to be educated on the legislators, signing up for their newsletters and following them on social media, looking for other opportunities to engage with them, like attending their town halls or seeing that they're going to be at a local school event. And those are great opportunities to just say hi and keep continuing the conversation with them. Calling the members' offices when there are relevant action alerts on legislation, thanking the members, and then staying in touch with those staff members. And then of course, follow up if you meet with them, if you make an ask of them, continue to follow up, emailing their staffer to thank them and asking them for an update on your request. If there are any changes, any news or updates related to your ask, sharing those with the staff person, and then continuing to stay in touch. Here's some more examples about social media posts. And then if you are interested in being more active in rare disease advocacy, I'd love to share a few ways you could do that through RDLA. One is signing up for our monthly newsletters. We do a monthly webinar just similar to this, where we invite members of the community to share their policy work and advocacy work on our webinars. So those meetings and webinars are open to the public, as well as speakers. We're always looking for speakers to speak on those webinars on the work that they're doing and to present. RDLA does a number of things to keep our community informed on policy issues, so including our webinar. Our website, rareadvocates.org, serves as a legislative clearinghouse. We have a monthly newsletter that gets shared about the latest on policy news, action alerts, and policy and advocacy events. There's an online calendar on our website as well that lists different policy and advocacy events in Washington, D.C. and around the country. And then you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter too, and we share a lot of breaking news and action alerts on those social media handles as an easy way to stay up to date. And then I had mentioned Rare Disease Week last year, but we are gearing up in the next couple of weeks for Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill 2020. Last year's, in 2019, was our 8th and biggest year to date. We had over 800 patients, caregivers, researchers, and other advocates who joined us that week in Washington, D.C. So the 2020 event is in a couple of weeks on February 25th through February 28th. All rare disease patients, caregivers, and other advocates are more than welcome and invited to attend one or more events during the week. It is a series of events aimed at empowering patients here in Washington, D.C. And like all of our events, it is free for advocates to attend. You can learn more about the individual events of Rare Disease Week on our website at rareadvocates.org/RDW. But at Rare Disease Week, you would learn about key legislative initiatives that affect the rare disease community and have the potential to benefit rare disease patients, educate legislators on the unmet needs of rare disease community and your rare disease specifically, as well as build relationships with legislators here in Washington, D.C., raise awareness on your specific rare disease and rare diseases in general, and then network with other rare disease advocates and organizations, members of Congress and staff, leaders at FDA and NIH, and representatives of biopharmaceutical companies. And if Rare Disease Week in Washington, D.C. is unattainable at the moment due to distance or other factors, RDLA actually has a program called Rare Across America, where we schedule meetings for rare disease advocates with our members during the August recess when members of Congress are home while Congress is in recess here in Washington, D.C. So we schedule the meetings in the local offices for rare disease advocates to meet with their members and advocate for legislation benefiting the rare disease community. We've already set the date that registration will open, May 4th, 2020, so you can mark your calendars. And like all of our programs, it is free for patients, caregivers, and other advocates. And you can actually learn more about this program at rareacrossamerica.org. Really, the goals of Rare Across America, again, is to strengthen relationships and to advance legislation. It's a really great program for those who are new to advocacy and can't travel to Washington, D.C., or are perhaps a little hesitant to do so because it's in the district offices and state offices. It's much easier to get to those meetings. But it's also great for those who are already veteran advocates who just want another opportunity for advocacy and to meet with their members and to continue to strengthen and build those relationships. Then, of course, a best practice of effective advocacy is to make the friends before you need them. So continue to gain those allies to be a champion for the rare disease community. And then here's some ways to stay in touch, our social media handles, and our director of patient programs is Lindsay Cundiff. She's currently on maternity leave, but that is her email address there, and you will get forwarded to other staff people if you contact her between now and when she gets back. And then, of course, my email address is right there, svonfelden@everylifefoundation.org. If you have any questions or would like to get more involved, please feel free to email me. And that is all I have for today.
Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate it. So we've had a few questions come in that I'll ask on behalf of our attendees. And just a reminder, if you have a question that you'd like to ask Shannon, you can email us at info@mitoaction.org if you're on the phone, or if you're on the Zoom presentation, you can submit that through the chat feature. So the first question I have, Shannon, is what's the best way to find out which pieces of legislation are relevant to the mito community so that we can be aware when we go in to speak to our legislators?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think working with your organization and figuring out what their policy priorities are. If you are looking for other suggestions or ideas, we are more than happy to help you and provide more information. The Everylife has their policy priorities. Also, joining our webinars and our newsletters, we share a lot of different information from other organizations as well. I always think that one of the great things about the rare disease community that we didn't have at other organizations I worked for is that you're really able to learn from each other and what each other are doing, and learning in very impactful ways. So the webinars and our newsletters are great avenues for learning what other organizations are working on in the rare disease community.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question is, and I'll just preface this by saying, you know, the mito cocktail is one of the only treatments available for mitochondrial disease, and there are lots of issues that patients face in not having the supplements that make up the mito cocktail covered. And so there are various states where legislation has been instituted and proposed, what we call the mito cocktail bill in the mitochondrial disease community. If someone is interested in initiating and trying to get such a piece of legislation introduced in their state, where do they begin?
So I always think that the best place to start is with your representative. So your legislator, your state senator, your state representative, and starting with them and talking to them about the problems that you're facing as their constituent and what the solution can be. And in many cases, the state legislators are willing to pick up that torch on behalf of their constituent. If they themselves are not willing to do it, I would research who in your state legislator is on the health committees, who's very passionate about healthcare, who might be facing different healthcare related issues themselves. I mean, you can find allies in very different ways. It's really doing that research to find that connection and that link. But my advice would be to start with your own state representatives, and if they are not open to it themselves, moving on to those who are strong voices on healthcare already.
Okay, great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and I'll just kind of add to that, or add a question to that. When you go in to have that type of meeting, do you need to come in with a proposed draft, or is it something you can just come in with the idea and kind of sharing your story, sharing your struggle, and sharing why this type of legislation would be important? You know, how far down the line do you need to be when you go in and start to have this particular type of conversation?
I think getting the dialogue and conversation started and seeing what their willingness is to actually introduce legislation on your behalf is a great place to start. I think if eventually you're able to hand them bill text, for instance, which is not something, you know, the everyday person off the street can just whip up bill text to hand to a legislator. Unfortunately, there's a lot of legalese and whatnot in the text that's necessary that I can't even do myself. That's for experts to do. But you could share examples that have been introduced in other states, certainly. And any assistance that you're able, or your organization is able to provide to help them develop it, is very much appreciated. Even if you were to walk in with bill text, there might be certain things that the member might want to change or do differently. So definitely having some flexibility if you did have something very specific in mind. But I think having an idea on how to fix the problem is definitely appreciated and necessary. It's very hard to go into an office and explain what the problem is and not be able to give them an idea on what the fix might be.
Right. Okay. Next question. If you're not part of an advocacy event, what is the best way to schedule an appointment to see your legislator? Do you just call? Are there particular times that they make themselves available, or how do you go about scheduling that appointment?
Yeah, so it is literally as easy as picking up a telephone. Just Google your legislator's office, find their office phone number, ask to speak. So ask to speak with the person who handles their schedule. And so many offices have different ways of accepting scheduling requests. Some you will ask you to then email the information, who you are, why you want to meet with them, what days and times you're available. Some will just take it over the phone, some will. I've even heard of people still on the Hill requiring that they come by fax. But calling the office, figuring out who the person is who schedules the legislators' schedule, how to make the request, and then doing it in whatever way they want you to do it. And then following up a week or two later, you know, things are constantly moving on a legislator schedule, depending on events and when they need to be in the Capitol. So following up a week or two later after you've made the request to make sure that it hasn't fallen off the scheduler's to-do list. But it really actually is a lot easier to get into a member's office than I think a lot of people realize.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then once you get that meeting, you know, what are the best ways to make sure that it's a memorable meeting for either the staff member or the representative? I mean, do you stick to the facts? Do you focus on your personal story? Do you bring photos? What are some things that you can do during those meetings to have the greatest impact?
Well, I think, first of all, come in with your best foot forward. Come in excited to meet with, happy to meet with them with a positive attitude. I know that sometimes, people can think that given a member's certain voting record, they'll never support me, but I'm going to go in there and ask them anyway, and it can kind of have a negative tone or feeling to it from the get-go. So you want to go in there with your best foot forward, positive, happy to meet them, very optimistic, I think is the best way to do it. And then I think personal stories really, that's really going to be what moves them to action. If you have facts to back it up, I think that's wonderful. That's important as well. I know when you're on Capitol Hill and you have a bill that's going to cost money, they always want to know if you have that CBO score and how much it's going to cost the government. So having whatever facts and information you can have to back it up and help your cause is great. If the person with the disease isn't with you, if you're a caregiver, for instance, having pictures I think is great. In fact, I know some organizations will bring in a little packet of other stories, little blurbs and pictures of other people with the disease in the state to share as well. So I think keeping it personal really is the most impactful way to go about having these meetings.
Perfect. So I have a comment from someone. The question is, are the dates for 2021 available? Do you have those dates yet? And just to share his comment, I think that will be meaningful for everybody, is that he is a former educator and wants to be able to take the opportunity to bring his daughter and share with her that even though he has a rare disease and he's had challenges, that there's still things that he can do to make a difference, not only for himself, but for the entire community. And what a great way to do that than to go to the Hill or to go to see your local legislator with your kids as well. Because they live it and they're impacted as well. So maybe just Shannon, some thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think, our kids can be some of the greatest advocates, to be honest. Really, advocacy is so empowering. So I think not only for the person who might have the disease, but also for their kids and their caregivers as well, to be involved and feel like they're part of the process and they can create positive change as well is a great thing. I don't have exact dates available for Rare Disease Week 2021. What I can say is it's always in the last week of February or the first week of March. So right around Rare Disease Day.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and those dates should be available probably right after we're done with the Rare Disease 2020. Yeah.
And then I have one last question. Does Everylife have or know of local groups that we can get involved with in our local communities or states?
Yeah, so actually one of the things that Everylife is actually very interested in is seeing state-based rare disease organizations grow and build in the states. I know that there are several already in existence, these independent rare disease state organizations, Cal Rare being one, Texas Rare Alliance, Alabama Rare, New England Rare. So I think there's Kansas City Rare. Now I'm just, but if there are specific areas you live in and you're interested in learning, if there's one of these organizations near you, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to put you in contact with the organization and people who run them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So thank you, Shannon, for sharing this wonderful information with our community, and a special thanks to your team and the Everylife Foundation for all you do to support advocacy in the rare disease space. I just want to throw out to the group that Stephanie Perrin, who is Mito Action's Mito 411 coordinator, will be attending Rare Disease Week. And so please let us know if you're planning on going, because I know that Stephanie would love to connect with you while you're in DC. So you can email her at stephanie@mitoaction.org. And I think it would be great to have our Mito community connect while everybody's in DC. So just as a reminder, today's presentation will be posted on our website in the course of the next couple of days for anyone who would like to listen again. And we really encourage you to share these presentations with family members, physicians, anybody who's connected to rare disease. So we thank each and every one of you for joining us today for our monthly Mito Expert series. And we wish everyone a great weekend, and we will talk with you all again soon. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Okay, thank you.